right, Mr. Jackson, go right ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. When last we left off, we were talking a little bit about some of the familial connections that your family has with certain law enforcement agencies. We talked about Boston Police Department, obviously, Brian Albert. We talked a little bit about Massachusetts State Police and knowing friends of friends with regard to Chris and Julie, correct?
Object.
Knowing friends of Chris and Julie?
Friends of friends of Chris and Julie.
Is that your relationship?
With who?
I'd asked you about, I'll ask you a different question.
Okay.
A little bit vague. Courtney Proctor is friends with Julie's sister.
Yes.
And obviously Courtney also knows Julie and Chris, correct?
Sustained.
And there's also a connection to Canton Police Department through Kevin Albert, is that right?
Object.
Can you answer that? Is there a connection? Do you have a connection with the Canton Police Department through Kevin Albert?
Not with the police department, but Kevin Albert is Brian Albert's brother.
Right, and Kevin works for whom?
The Canton Police.
Thank you. So you've been interviewed many times by different law enforcement agencies, be they Massachusetts State Police, Canton Police, or otherwise, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Those interviews have not just been over the period of weeks, it's been over the period of weeks and months and even years since this occurred, correct?
Yes.
You were contacted by another law enforcement agency that was not Massachusetts State Police and not Canton Police Department at one point in April of 2023. Do you remember that?
Yes.
I want to talk for a second about that series of interview, or that interview. You were contacted at your residence by these members of this law enforcement agency, correct?
Yes.
All right. Later that same day, you did sit down with those same law enforcement officers for a formal interview.
On that,
On that same day that you were contacted by them, they also went into your home and actually interviewed you, correct?
yes, it was brief.
All right. Those law enforcement officers identified themselves as being associated with an agency that is not Massachusetts State Police. You understood that.
Yes.
And you understood that they were not involved with Canton Police Department either, correct?
Correct.
Completely separate agency, is that right?
Yes.
During the course of that interview, those officers informed you very specifically, Ms. McCabe, that it is a crime to lie to them even during an interview, correct?
Yes.
Those law enforcement officers informed you that they were investigating certain circumstances attendant to John O'Keefe's death, correct?
They were very vague on what they were.
Understood.
I don't know what they were investigating.
But you did understand that it was having something to do with your involvement at 34 Fairview on January 28th, 29th, 2022.
Objection.
As a witness or otherwise?
Objection.
Sustained as to certain terminology, Mr. Jackson.
Sure. Let me see if I can rephrase that, Ms. McCabe. You were aware of the subject matter of their interview, right? They weren't interviewing about a car you bought last year, correct?
Correct.
They were interviewing you about, basically, about what you're testifying to here, correct?
When I first spoke with them, the conversation was pretty vague.
But the subject matter, vague or specific, was about this subject matter.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. They first contacted you telephonically, called you on the phone. Is that right?
Actually, they walked up to my car.
They walked up to your car.
Yes.
Okay, that was the very first introduction, correct?
Yes.
At that point, they had not identified themselves, correct?
They didn't know.
All right, and at that point, you told them that you were not Jennifer McCabe. They asked you who you were, and you said, I'm Nicole.
I thought they were like selling something, so I was like, oh no, I'm not the homeowner.
Fair enough, fair enough. However, after you said, I'm not Jennifer McCabe, you walked into the house, they then called you on the phone.
Yes,
They were
correct.
still sitting outside your house.
I don't know where they were, but they did call me.
They were close by.
I'm not aware.
Well, the call came almost immediately after you walked back in the house, correct?
I'm not sure how much time had passed.
Give me an idea. It wasn't an hour. It was
No, it was
5 or 10
soon
minutes.
after. I'm just not sure. I can't tell you where they were located. I'm sorry.
okay. They told you that they would, at that point, they identified themselves as being law enforcement agents, correct?
When they called me, yes.
And they told you at that time that they were not with Canton Police. You knew at least they were not with Canton Police Department. They were not troopers with Massachusetts State Police, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And they told you that they would like to have an interview with you. They'd like to have a sit-down talk with you, correct?
Yes.
You told them that you would be willing to submit to an interview, but you needed about 10 minutes to get ready, correct?
Yes.
You ultimately did allow them into your home, and you did sit down for a formal interview with them, correct?
Yes, brief, but yes.
And it was during that formal interview inside the home that it was explained to you that it would be a crime for you to lie to them on any material issue, correct?
Yes.
During the course of your interview, your husband, Matt McCabe, came home. Is that right?
Yes.
As these law enforcement agents continued to question you, as law enforcement officers continued to question you at some point, you informed them that you did not feel comfortable with any further questioning and you suspended the interview, correct?
Yes.
Before leaving, however, those same law enforcement officers asked you if you had contacted anyone in those 10 minutes when you indicated, I need 10 minutes to get ready, between the time they called you and the time that they showed up and came inside your house, correct?
Yes.
You told them that you had contacted your husband, Matt McCabe,
Yes.
which is why he came home, right?
Yes.
And you told them that you had called Carrie Roberts before they interviewed you, correct? At that moment.
I'm not 100% sure, but if you have it, I'll.
Give me
It
one-
seems like something I would do, but if you have it, could show me.
Absolutely. If I may have just a moment, Your Honor.
Okay.
May I approach briefly?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan? First, I'm going to ask you, Ms. McCabe, if you recognized that as being a report of that interview, just generally, yes or no?
It appears to be, yes.
May I approach the witness stand and stand by the witness stand for a couple of questions?
Yes.
Thank you. If I can have that.
Sure.
I want to direct your attention, if I may, and for court and counsel, page 3 of 4, starting with the second to the last full paragraph, going into page 5, top full, page 4, top full paragraph.
Okay.
If you could review those two paragraphs, read them to yourself, and then look up and let me know when you're finished. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. McCabe?
Yes.
Did reviewing those paragraphs refresh your recollection as to whether or not, as to what you told those agents initially? I'm sorry, what you told those officers initially from that other law enforcement agency, about who you contacted in that 10-minute interval?
Yes, I told them.
And you told them that you had contacted your husband, Matt McCabe,
Yes,
and Carrie Roberts.
correct.
I want to stick with that for just a quick second. One of the first calls you made after being contacted by these other law enforcement officers from a different agency, one of the first calls you made was to Carrie Roberts. Is that right?
If she was the first one,
That's what I'm asking. One of the first two calls you made, your husband,
right.
come home, there's law enforcement outside my door, I'm guessing is what you said, correct?
I don't remember my exact words now, but I did ask him to come home, correct?
And
Yes.
Carrie Roberts.
Okay, yes,
You wanted to let Ms. Roberts know that you had been contacted by certain officers from a different agency, correct?
I was curious if they had already been to her.
That was
Because-
that was my next
Oh,
question.
yeah.
You also wanted to find out had these law enforcement officers from this different agency contacted her, correct?
Yes, because typically, if
I
you
just
enter
asked
our
yes or no.
town, she's.
Ms. McCabe, yes or no?
Oh, sorry, I was just trying to
That's okay.
explain. I'm sorry.
Is that why you contacted her, to find out if in fact they had contacted her before you? Yes or no?
Yes,
And you also wanted to find out what she told them, if she had been contacted by them, correct? That was your motive in calling her.
no,
So you just wanted to find out, had she been contacted? But if
Yes.
she had said yes, you weren't going to say, and what the hell did they say? What'd they ask you?
well, I can't say what I would have answered, what I would have asked her, but I know I was calling to see if they had been there, yes, that is correct.
That was your intent.
I called to ask her if they had been there, yes.
So that was your intent, yes?
Yes,
Okay. Your motive in calling Carrie Roberts at that moment, before your interview, was to ensure that your story would line up with her story, Ms. McCabe. Isn't that right?
no, that is not.
You wanted to find out if she had talked to these particular law enforcement officers and what she had told them, so that your story could somehow align, or it could inform how you responded to questions that they asked you. Isn't that true?
That's not true. We both know what happened. We don't have to have a story. There is no story. There's what happened, and that's it.
So if that's true, Ms. McCabe, you'd have no reason to call Carrie and ask her if she had been contacted by these law enforcement agents, because it's just the truth, correct?
We're going through this whole experience together. We call each other about everything.
There would
That's
be no
nothing
reason,
more than that.
So
I'm sorry.
Let her finish her answer. Go ahead, Ms. McCabe, you can finish that.
There's nothing more than me calling and saying, hey, did they come to your house? That's what we did when the media showed up, when Miss Reed's private investigator showed up. We just give each other the heads up, hey, somebody's coming. Because we're just like normal moms. We're not used to this.
And that's helpful in making sure that the stories she tells are consistent with the stories you tell to different law enforcement agencies, correct?
No, we are not telling stories.
So let her finish. You said no what?
I said, no, we're not telling stories. We don't have to compare.
And if in fact what you were telling was just the truth, there would be no reason for you to inquire about who's contacted her, when, for what purpose. Would there? There'd be no reason. Would there?
There's no inquiring. It's like when when the ice cream truck was at the street next door and I'm saying, did the ice cream truck come? It's really that simple.
So you asked a question,
Not about an ice cream truck.
an argumentative question, and she responded in kind. Next question, Mr.
Thank you.
Jackson.
You also testified in your direct examination, staying with Ms. Roberts for just a second, about a timeline that you and Ms. Roberts put together, correct?
Yes,
That's another example of the two of you talking about your own perceptions and comparing and contrasting those perceptions and putting it down on paper, correct?
No,
Is that yes or no?
it's a no. Can I explain or no?
I'm sure Mr. Brennan will have follow-up questions. After you gave that answer to those law enforcement officers at that separate law enforcement agency, they asked you, was there anyone else that you contacted in that 10-minute period before we got a chance to talk to you?
Mm-hmm.
And your answer was no, correct?
Correct.
And that was a lie, correct?
It wasn't a lie, no.
Was it true? Was it
I-
the truth or a lie?
It wasn't a lie.
Okay, so it was the truth. You had not spoken to any other person between the time they contacted you telephonically and you said, I need 10 minutes, and then they came in the door. During that arc of time, you didn't talk to anybody else or contact anybody else other than Matt McCabe, Kerry Roberts. Now you're testifying that was a true statement. Yes or no, ma'am?
I can't answer that yes or no.
It's pretty binary. Had you talked, well, let me ask you this. In point of fact, you did talk to other people. You contacted others, in addition to Matt McCabe and Kerry Roberts, correct? Yes or no?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so when you said no to the answer, did you contact anyone other than Matt and Kerry? That would be, by definition, Ms. McCabe, a lie, correct?
No.
It's not a lie? Is there some shade of lie that I'm not aware of?
It's the way you're asking the question. If
Okay,
I
let
could
me ask it a different
explain,
way.
if I could explain,
Let me ask it
it
a
will
different
make
way.
more sense to you.
The agents asked you, I'm going to go over this one more time, then I'm going to move on. The agents
Okay.
asked you, in fact, did you contact anyone between the time we called you and set up the interview and the 10 minutes before we walked in the door? They asked you that question, correct?
The objection sustained. Watch the choice of language.
I'm sorry. I meant the law enforcement agency. That law enforcement agency, the members of that law enforcement agency contacted you. Sorry. They asked you who you had contacted between the time they first telephoned you and walked in the door 10 minutes later. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. Data point number one. Data point number two, you told them Matt and Kerry, correct?
Correct.
You had actually contacted, they then asked you, did you contact anyone else other than Matt and Kerry, correct?
Correct.
And you said no. Is that correct?
At that moment, I said no, yes.
Correct. At that, or any moment.
No,
matter what
at
the
that
moment.
moment, because they had just come in my house.
I asked you,
Only one person can talk at a time.
you said the word no,
She
correct?
was finishing her answer. Finish your answer.
I had said no because I was in a situation where there are two officers from a different agent had come in, were asking me questions, or they had said, can I come in and ask you questions? At first, I thought they were selling something. Then they identified themselves. I just dropped my kids off at school. Going to be completely honest, I hadn't brushed my teeth. So I kind of made some phone
Objection, Your Honor.
calls.
This is
That's
non-responsive.
so. Next question, Mr.
Thank you.
Johnson.
Ms. McCabe, after you said no, that you hadn't contacted anybody else, those two law enforcement officers from that separate agency who had told you it was a crime to lie to them, they left, correct?
Yes.
Subsequent to that, Mr. McCabe, your husband,
Objection.
Sustained.
they left you their card so you could call them if need be, correct?
Yes, they did.
And you, in fact, did call them back, correct?
Yes, I did.
Without telling me the content of the conversation you had, did you have a conversation with Mr. McCabe?
Objection.
Sustained.
Did you call them back and say, I'm calling you back because my husband told me
Objection.
that I lied to you and I better clear that lie up?
So sustained. Jurors, remember I told you before that only answers to questions are evidence? Be mindful of that.
May we approach?
Next, yes.
May I?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. You ultimately called these officers back, correct?
Yes.
And you explained to them that you had been untruthful with them, correct?
I explained that I had forgotten to mention a couple of people that I had reached out to.
You had forgotten. Is that your testimony?
Yes.
You had forgotten. You remembered Matt and you remembered Carrie, but you had forgotten the others that you had just contacted maybe 30 minutes before.
Yes.
There were 5 people that you contacted, weren't there?
I contacted Matt.
Let's go through them. Understand
Yeah.
yes or no. You know them?
I know 4 off the top of my head.
Okay, let's go through them.
Okay.
You contacted your husband, correct?
Yes.
You contacted Carrie Roberts, correct?
Yes.
You contacted Peggy O'Keefe, correct?
Yes.
Then, Ms. McCabe, you contacted the district attorney's office, correct?
My witness advocate.
The district attorney's office.
My witness advocate who works
Miss-
for the district attorney's
Thank
office.
you, Ms. McCabe.
Yes.
And you also left out that you contacted Brian Albert himself, correct?
Yes, my brother-in-law.
For some reason, your brother-in-law, who's the 30-year Boston police detective, correct?
Yes.
And on whose lawn John O'Keefe was found dead or dying,
Objection.
I'll allow that.
correct?
Yes.
For some reason, you did not want these officers to know that you had communicated specifically with Brian Albert, the homeowner, just before you talked to them, correct?
No, incorrect.
There was some reason that was important enough for you to lie about that, even though you had been admonished that it's a crime to lie about that to those officers, correct?
Incorrect. I didn't lie to them. I had forgotten who I had called.
And all of a sudden, you had an epiphany right after they walked out the door?
Yes. Matt said, who have you spoken to?
Objection.
I'm going to allow it, it's out, and you're not to go any further, Mr. Jackson.
Ms. McCabe, I want to draw your attention to January 28. You had gone out drinking with your family at the Waterfall Bar and Grill, correct?
I went with my husband and met my sister, yes.
And met the other family, correct? The other family members, meaning
My niece.
Matt McCabe, Nicole, Chris, Julie, Caitlin, correct?
Yes,
And I think you mentioned Tristan was there as well.
yes,
You were later joined by Nick and Karina Kolakithis, is that right?
yes,
Ultimately, Brian Higgins showed up
yes,
and Brian Albert showed up.
yes.
You previously indicated that Caitlin's boyfriend, Tristan, left early for whatever reason. He had errands to run or had to get to bed early for some reason, is that right?
He left before us, yes.
So he didn't stay through the shank of the evening.
Through the what?
The shank of the evening, through the course of the evening.
Oh, okay.
Is that right?
Yes,
Okay. And ultimately, at the Waterfall, John O'Keefe and Miss Reed showed up as well.
yes.
You didn't see any tension at all between John O'Keefe and Karen that night, did you?
No, I didn't.
They appeared to be getting along,
Yeah, yes,
sort of a normal couple having a nice evening out together.
yes.
Neither John nor Karen Reed appeared drunk or inebriated, out of sorts.
No, I wouldn't categorize them as drunk or inebriated.
And not
But again, I don't know what the definition of drunk is.
Well, that's a fair statement. I'm
Yeah.
not asking for their BAC, but they didn't appear to be stumbling around, falling all over themselves, and sloppy drunk, correct?
No,
Out of control, nothing like that.
no,
Okay. You did see Brian Higgins and Brian Albert at a high top table, sort of together, through the course of that evening, correct?
we were all kind of around like a long high top table.
And John O'Keefe, and as you look at I'm going to use the perspective of the video that we've seen, that camera angle that we've seen. John O'Keefe and Miss Reed were sort of further off in the corner, closer to the bar rather than to the tables, correct? Along with the Kolakithises and those, and you, as a matter of fact.
Yes, at different times, everyone was kind of moving around. I spent the majority of the time that Karen and John were there speaking with Karen.
And that was sort of over toward the bar.
We weren't in the bar, we were at the table, so it was one side of the table and the other. It wasn't
enough.
like far away,
Right.
kind of, yeah.
I'm using the bar sort of as a landmark for nothing. I didn't mean you were sidled up to the bar, but just
Yeah.
sort of as a landmark. You were closer to the bar than, for instance, in the foreground, which would be the high top tables in the foreground, correct?
We were just on the other, I'm confused about this. We were just on the other side of the table.
Okay. You did see on the opposite side of that high top table, that's where Brian Albert and Brian Higgins were standing, talking, and communicating with each other. Is that right?
I believe so. I was talking to Miss Reed. I wasn't really paying attention to them.
Did you ever see those two men get physical with one another that night?
I did not that night. I did not see that.
Have you ever seen a full review in all the hours that you've sort of prepped for your testimony? Have you been shown that Waterfall video from the time you got there until the time you left?
Not the full video, but I have seen a good portion of it, yes.
Okay, and you've certainly seen the portion where Brian Albert and Brian Higgins get up from the table and sort of get physical with one another, correct?
I would say more like play fighting, and Nick Kolakidis was a little bit like doing it with them as well.
Okay, so the physical part is, all I'm asking is, did they touch each other? Yes.
I guess, yeah.
And you described it as play fighting, correct?
But I don't, if we could watch the video, it might explain it better than I could.
We probably will.
Oh, okay.
But right now, I'm just asking about your memory. You remember them squaring off on one another, playing, but squaring off on one another,
I
correct?
don't remember them squaring off. Like I said, I just watched the video. I don't remember it from that night, and I didn't really pay attention. It looked like foolish, like guys just, I don't even know how to describe it.
From your perspective, having watched the video,
Mm-hmm.
it appeared that they squared off on each other and sort of took a fighting stance.
I didn't look at it that in depth, so I could not say that.
Did you see them walk up to each other and grapple with one another? Like they didn't notice punching each other.
Right.
I get that. Mm-hmm. Were they grappling with one another, like faking punches to each other?
I don't know.
Almost like sparring a little bit.
I don't honestly know.
But you did see the
I
video.
saw them together. It's blurry, and they're kind of, I don't know really what they're doing.
Okay, but they weren't standing there holding hands for
Oh, God, no. No.
They weren't on their phones, right?
They were engaging with each other, playfully, grabbing at each other. I don't really,
Playfully grabbing at each other, play fighting, correct? That's my point.
I'd have to watch the video to categorize it as play fighting.
You don't have that in your head?
I didn't know. It was a quick clip. I wasn't like focusing on Brian and Brian. I was just identifying that was myself in the video, and there was Miss Reed. And I believe Miss Reed actually did some play fighting to Matt.
There was, in fact, to Matt.
Yeah, I feel like she was about like this to Matt at one point. Yeah, in the video.
So let's talk about Brian and Brian Higgins and Brian Albert. Those two men, very large in stature, correct?
They're the guys. Yeah.
Big boys. A lot bigger than me, right?
Yeah.
They took a fighting stance with each other and started grappling, playing, coming toward each other as if they were engaging in a fake physical altercation, correct?
I did not see that. I'm sorry.
Okay. You didn't even see it on the video.
I saw them on the video grabbing at each other. I didn't see stances but again, I didn't pay much attention to it.
And that's your best memory as you sit here today?
Yes.
Okay. Eventually, you, your husband, Brian Albert, Brian Higgins, Nicole, Caitlin, everybody went over to 34 Fairview at the end of the night,
Yes.
correct? The bar closed at, I'm guessing, midnight.
Okay.
Is that right?
I think we were wrapping up around then. I don't know what time it actually closes.
When you left Waterfall, the people that were still there included Matt, your husband, and John O'Keefe. Is that right?
Yes.
You walked out with Karina Kolakithis and Karen Reed.
Yes.
And you said to Miss Reed something along the lines of, "You're coming with me," correct?
I said, why don't you come with me?
Okay, fair enough. You were prompting her to join you for the ride over to 34 Fairview. Is that right?
Yes.
You even went outside and sort of waited in the cold. There's a video. Have you seen the video of you outside? The surveillance video of you outside in the cold?
Yes.
And you're sort of waiting there, moving from foot to foot like it's freezing out, which I'm sure it was, correct?
Yes.
In a big puffy coat of some kind, right?
So the question was, I moving foot to foot in a coat? Yes.
My question is more, did you see yourself waiting outside in the cold?
I saw myself convert. I believe I was in a conversation at that point when I was standing out there with John and Karen.
And that's when you were asking Karen to come with you?
No, I had asked Karen previously when we were at the door to come with me because I didn't know how long Matt and John were going to be in the bar because they
Right.
were in there still.
And that would have, by definition, brought Karen to 34 Fairview separate and apart from John O'Keefe if Karen had come with you. Is that
Yes.
right? Miss Reed ultimately declined your invitation and did go with John. Is that right?
John ended up coming to the door, so they just went together, yes.
And finally, you walked away and went with your husband, Matt, over to 34 Fairview in your personal vehicle, correct?
Yes.
When you arrived at 34 Fairview, were you the first among the group that we've just talked about to arrive, or had others arrived before you?
Others had arrived before me.
When you walked in to 34 Fairview, where was everybody generally located? Give me a layout of the interior of the home, how you walked in, and where everybody was located, the people that were there when you walked in from the Waterfall.
So I walked in through the front door. I took a right into the kitchen. And then there were people sitting around the kitchen table, Brian Albert Jr., Julie Nagel, Sarah Levinson, Caitlin Albert. My sister was over more towards like the counters and the sink. And Brian Albert and Brian Higgins were, there's like a room right off of the kitchen, like a TV room. And they were in there just talking. I think Nicole had like put up some new pictures, so or maybe the sun and the Marines. They might have been looking at a picture. Vaguely, I have a faint memory of that.
You indicated that you walked in the front door, correct?
Yes.
May I approach briefly?
Yes.
Yeah, this is your copy. I'll take care of the action later. Can you just take a look at that photograph for just a quick second?
Yes.
Do you recognize that photograph?
Yes.
What do you recognize that photograph as being?
It's my sister's house.
34 Fairview?
Yes, sorry, 34 Fairview.
Brian Albert's house as well?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'd like to mark this as marked for identification. There's a,
Identification's fine.
thank you. If I may. What would be the next in order?
Exhibit F for identification.
Thank you. Let me have just a moment, Your Honor.
Okay.
What exhibit number is that, Mr. Wolf? 3. Your Honor, with the court's permission, I'm going to show a different exhibit until the other issue can be resolved. With the court's permission, it's Commonwealth Exhibit 3. Permission to publish?
Yes.
Mr. Wolf, could you highlight or enlarge the house as much as you can? Thank you. Ms. McCabe, do you recognize what's depicted in this photo? I know it's a little bit of an angle.
Yes.
What is that?
That is 34 Fairview.
Okay. Can you, I think this laser will work. May I approach?
Yes.
Can you use that laser and point to the front door that you entered when you walked in the house? Okay, that's directly in the middle of the just to the left of the flagpole for this purposes of this photograph, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Is there another entry door on the house that you may not be able to see, but you know the general area?
Yes.
Where's that door?
So that would be, see where these two windows are?
Yes.
The door would be kind of behind that right there. So it's right to the left of those two windows.
And Ms. McCabe, just staying with doors for a second, is there another door associated with the garage?
Oh, actually, yeah, there is. Right there.
Right there next to that side door?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. May I approach?
Yes.
Thank you. You didn't go in the side door, you went in the front door that night.
Yes.
You indicated that once inside the house, you were sort of in the kitchen area. Is that right?
I was in the kitchen, yes.
You weren't paying special attention to Brian Albert or Brian Higgins, what they were doing. As a matter of
No.
fact, I think they went into a different room. Is that right?
There's a room, kind of the kitchen opens up into the TV room. So they were in there.
So the only two that you recognized at this point in the night, not being sort of with everybody else, were Brian Albert and Brian Higgins, separated out in the family room or whatever that room's called, living room.
Yeah, I feel like just right there, right where they are. Just
Okay.
kind of right in the next room.
When you first pulled up, did you notice any vehicles in front of Brian Albert's house?
Yes, I did.
What vehicles did you notice? Vehicle or vehicles did you
Just
notice?
one.
What was that vehicle?
It was a Jeep.
Can you describe the Jeep for us, please?
I really can't. All I can say is that when I pulled down, the Jeep was on the parked on the street in front of the mailbox, and I turned into the driveway.
Okay. Did the Jeep have any special features on it that you remember, that you
No.
can describe?
Not that I can recall.
Big giant snowplow on the front?
Again, it was dark. I didn't really pay much detail to it beyond, I just asked, whose Jeep is that?
And did you learn whose Jeep that was?
I did, yes.
Whose Jeep was it?
It was Brian Higgins' Jeep.
And you said that it was parked in front of the mailbox, is that right?
Yes,
So as you're looking at the house, the mailbox would be closest to the driveway, is that right?
yes,
Rather than, for instance, the flagpole on the other side of the lawn.
correct. So if the flagpole's here, there's the lawn, and then here's here's the mailbox, and then the driveway's over here.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does to me.
Okay.
Thank you for that. You've previously indicated that the back edge of that vehicle, Brian Higgins' Jeep, was at the side, basically, of the driveway, which is what you've just described. It would be blocking the mailbox, the rear end associated with the driveway entrance, correct?
Yes.
Have you ever discussed having seen that Jeep in that spot with anybody else in this case?
Is that including previous testimony, or?
It is. At any time, before you testified at the previous hearing, had you discussed having seen that Jeep in that spot with anybody else? For instance, your husband?
Objection.
Sustained.
Was there any other car on that curb line, if you will, other than the Jeep when you pulled in?
Not that I remember.
And Brian Higgins, if it's his Jeep, he's in the house, that Jeep's not moving, correct? So it stayed where it was.
Yes.
At some point, did you observe Miss Reed's vehicle pull up to the driveway? I'm sorry, pull up to the house.
I was told there was a vehicle outside, so I went and looked.
Where
Yes.
was that vehicle? When you looked that first time, where was Miss Reed's SUV?
When I went to the front door and looked out, it was straight ahead.
So that would be parallel, actually in line with the Jeep, correct?
Yes.
Directly in front of the Jeep.
I don't know the distance, but yes, you're correct. It was in front of the Jeep.
So if the Jeep was it's a full-size Jeep, correct?
I don't know what size it is.
Certainly the SUV is a full-size SUV.
Yes.
All right. So that would take up much of the room of the curb area in front of 34 Fairview, between the Jeep, assuming there's a snowplow,
Right.
and a full-size SUV, correct?
I'm not really sure of the whole area, but there was the Jeep and then there was the car. I just don't know the distance between them.
You gave a description of the vehicles that were out in front of 34 Fairview in your January 29, 2022 interview with Trooper Proctor, correct?
He came to my house and asked me questions, correct?
When you gave that interview to Trooper Proctor, you indicated to him that you first observed Miss Reed's vehicle parked on the street by the driveway, correct?
I never said by the driveway, no.
So if that's in a report, Trooper Proctor got that fact wrong, got that
Objection.
detail wrong.
Sustained.
If in fact, well, let me ask it this way. What did you say to Trooper Proctor about where that vehicle was?
Miss Reed's vehicle?
Correct.
I told him it was straight out front, the window. The straight out front of the front door. Sorry.
Trooper Proctor wrote a report about his interview with you, correct?
Correct?
You've seen that report in other hearings, is that right?
Yes.
Your interview with him was on January 29th. Do you remember the date? I'm sorry, I just said the date. Do you remember the time? My mistake.
I don't remember the exact time. I'm assuming afternoon, like after 12, or I'm not 100%. Sorry.
you had been contacted by Trooper Proctor while you were still at 34 Fairview, is that right?
Yes.
Ultimately, instead of coming from the Canton Police Department to 34 Fairview, you went home to your house.
I did.
To
Yes.
the Country Lane address.
Yes, I did.
And Trooper Proctor ended up meeting you there, correct?
Yes.
And in addition to you and Matt being there, Brian Albert showed up, correct?
I asked him to come.
So you asked your brother-in-law to come to the interview that you were having with Trooper Proctor formally in furtherance of his investigation surrounding the circumstances of this case, correct?
No.
But Brian Albert did show up at your house.
He did. I asked him to come, yes.
And he was inside the house when Trooper Proctor ultimately interviewed you, correct?
He was in the house, yes.
And you'd spoken to Brian Albert before Trooper Proctor had interviewed you formally, correct?
I believe so, yes.
As a matter of fact, several times you had to have spoken to him at 34 Fairview. You've already said that, right?
Oh, right, yeah, we were all there in the kitchen.
And then obviously you spoke to him about the interview before Trooper Proctor got to your house to interview you on the 29th as well, correct?
We were just talking about what happened. It wasn't specifically about Trooper Proctor.
Right, not about Trooper Proctor. You talked to Brian Albert about the circumstances of this case before you spoke with Trooper Proctor.
Yes, I had.
Do you remember exactly what you said to Trooper Proctor about the location of the SUV in front of the house?
I know what I said, yes.
Okay, what exactly did you say to him?
I said the car was straight out front of the front door. When I was looking out the front door, it was straight ahead.
Isn't it true that what you actually said, Ms. McCabe, is that you first observed the vehicle parked on the street by the driveway facing in the direction toward Chapman?
Objection.
I'll allow it. Is that what you said?
Those are not my words, no.
Okay, next question.
You've already indicated that following the events of January 28th and 29th, you have spoken extensively with your family and your friends, members of your family and your friend group about what happened that night, correct?
Yes,
And that includes Brian and Nicole Albert, is that right?
yes,
That includes Matt McCabe, your husband, correct?
yes,
That includes Chris and Julie Albert.
yes.
Includes other people that were there that night, including Brian Higgins.
I haven't spoken to Brian Higgins since, I believe, John O'Keefe's wake.
But you did speak to him that morning at 34 Fairview, is that correct?
Yeah, oh, yes, he was there, yes.
As a matter of fact, he's the one that told you to call Officer Lank back and have Officer Lank come back for the additional statement that you wanted to give Officer Lank. Is that right?
He may have suggested it, I'm not sure.
So in those discussions that you've had with all these folks, you've talked to the details about that night being at the bar, the house, who was where, all of those things, correct?
Yes,
You've talked about the timing of the night, who arrived, when people arrived at 34 Fairview, when people arrived at Waterfall Bar and Grill, correct?
no, those really aren't details we discuss. I mean, everybody kind of knows when they came and when they left. We talk more about, living with everything that we've gone through.
Well, what about on the morning of January 29th, when everybody was still in that sort of friends and family gathering inside 34 Fairview?
When I was there with my husband and sister and brother-in-law, and then Brian's friend and Julie Albert, I was trying to piece together what had happened. They were all being supportive. They had no idea what happened. We were just kind of sitting there in utter shock, waiting to hear from Kerry about John. It was nothing more than just us being together and trying to figure out what had happened. I had gotten a phone call from Karen to help her.
And during
here's
that
where I am.
conversation, or that series of conversations, you were sharing what your observations of that evening were, what your story was, how the evening started, how it ended for you, correct? Or the morning ended for you, correct?
No, I'm not correct.
During the time that you folks were inside the house discussing this, there was no law enforcement agent or officer inside that house, correct?
Correct.
So the entire family and the friend network that we're talking about, with whom you discussed all these events, everybody was entitled to and did coordinate their statements without any separation and without any law enforcement oversight, correct?
I was with my family, my sister, my brother-in-law. It wasn't really a big group of us. As I've mentioned, I had 5 or 6 people. I was in shock. I didn't know what had happened. They were just asking me what happened,
And you told
questions
them.
like that, and I absolutely told them. But
Okay.
it was no story. There was no us being allowed to do it. That was my family. They were just there with me.
But nobody was separated by law enforcement, correct?
I don't believe there was a reason to separate us.
Nobody, well, notwithstanding what you think was the reason, you're not a professional investigator, correct?
I'm not,
You're
no.
not a trained investigator.
No,
You're certainly not a homicide detective, correct?
no.
None of you witnesses were ever separated, were you, that morning?
There was no reason to separate us.
I'm not asking you if there was a reason for this, okay? I'm asking you whether or not factually anybody was separated in that house. Or was everybody allowed to talk amongst themselves?
I was with my family. We didn't need to be allowed.
Okay. Let me try this again. Was anybody in that house separated? Were the witnesses separated from each other? The family, who are witnesses, were they separated from each other? By law enforcement?
At that point, I don't think anyone but myself and Matt were maybe even witnesses.
Okay. I'm not asking you what your determination of who the witnesses are.
Mm-hmm.
I'm asking you whether the folks in that house were separated by law enforcement before you were able to have discussions about the events of January 28th and 29th. That's a yes or no question. Were you separated or not?
At one point, when Mike Lank was in the house, he had separated and talked to Nicole, then Brian, then Matt.
And then you promptly left and left everybody in the house together, correct?
He left us, yeah.
Right. Nobody was taken down to the station, is that right?
No?
As a matter of fact, Trooper Proctor didn't even come over to 34 Fairview, the scene of the incident, to interview you, correct?
I asked him to meet at my house because I had to go home to my children.
And he accommodated you, didn't he?
He did, yes.
And he accommodated the fact that Brian Albert escorted you to the house for your interview, correct?
Brian didn't escort me, no.
Well, he went to your house at the same time that Trooper Proctor was there to interview you, correct?
He came at some point, yes, by himself.
Before Trooper Proctor did the interview.
I'm not sure if he was there, if he got there before or when
Well,
he arrived.
You've testified in the past that
Yes.
Brian Albert came to your house alone. I don't mean you came in the same car.
Yes.
But he followed you over to your house before Trooper Proctor ever got there. And he was in the house while Trooper Proctor conducted his interview, correct?
Yes, Brian was
All
in
right.
the house for the interview.
Thank you. You've already indicated that you have been discussing this case with certain other witnesses, not for days or weeks or months, but literally for years, most specifically Carrie Roberts, correct?
The case in general, yes.
Just before Carrie Roberts testified at a grand jury proceeding in this case, you were with her, weren't you?
I don't recall what you're talking about.
Do you remember being at the grand jury?
Yes,
Do you remember testifying at the grand jury?
yes, the one back in
April.
April,
I think,
yes, yes.
2022?
Yes.
That sounds
Yeah,
right?
it sounds about right, yeah.
You remember being there in an anteroom with some other folks?
What's an
An
anteroom?
anteroom, a waiting room?
Oh, yeah,
Waiting for your testimony?
Yes,
You remember Carrie Roberts being with you in that exact same anteroom?
yes,
And that was right before her testimony, correct?
I believe so, yes.
So, in answer to my question, you two were together literally just before she testified at the grand jury, which was the first formal under oath testimony that she ever gave. Is that right?
Yes.
When she testified at the grand jury, was that before or after you two had gotten together and created this timeline?
We did the timeline right after John had passed.
So she testified, the answer is she testified after the timeline was created, correct?
Yes.
Brian Albert and his family had a dog on January 29th, 2022, did they not?
Yes, they did.
What was that dog's name?
Chloe,
What kind of dog was Chloe?
German Shepherd.
Was it do you know if it was a purebred German Shepherd or a mix of Malinois and German Shepherd, or do you know?
I have no idea.
Big dog,
Yeah, good sized dog. Yeah.
70-pounder.
I don't know its weight.
Wasn't a little munchkin dog, though. It was
No.
a full-size German
It's
Shepherd.
a full size, yeah.
On the morning that you described going into the house, January 29th, 6:40 a.m. or so, you indicated that you burst into the bedroom to wake your sister and Brian Albert. Is that right?
Yes, I went into the bedroom.
It's still dark out, correct?
Yes.
There had been relative chaos on the lawn for a number of minutes, from about 6:10 until at least 6:40. When you went in, there were still emergency vehicles with lights on and engines running, and chaos, relative chaos, bedlam, as somebody has said, on that front lawn, correct?
It was more on their side lawn and down the street, kind of like all the cruises. A lot of them were behind their lot.
Right in front of 34 Fairview, correct?
To the side, in the side yard of 34 Fairview, yes.
And on the lawn of 34 Fairview,
Yes,
where first responders were responding, correct?
yes,
And you said my client is screaming to the top of her lungs, is that right?
yes, she was.
And Carrie Roberts was screaming back at her,
Yes,
shut up or shut the fuck up, right?
yes.
Yeah. Then at 6:40 a.m., under the cover of darkness, you walked in the front door of the unlocked front door of Brian Albert's house, correct?
I went into my sister's house, correct?
It wasn't Brian Albert's house?
And Brian, yes, I'm
Right.
sorry.
You then climbed the stairs up toward the bedrooms, correct?
Yes,
You walked into the bedroom door where Brian Albert and Nicole Albert, according to you, were sleeping. Is that
Yeah.
right?
yes,
So you would agree that you unexpectedly, in terms of their view, unexpectedly walked into their house basically in the middle of the night, middle of the morning.
yes,
You indicated that when you went through their bedroom door, you sort of burst through, correct?
I opened the door. I don't know if I used the word burst.
You previously indicated that when you went through the door, it was chaotic because you were so amped up from the events. Is that right?
I don't know if I used those words.
Would you say that you were loud or quiet?
I think as I explained earlier, I was like where everything was going on around me, and I was kind of like in just a state of shock. And I remember thinking, I don't want to startle them, but I have to wake them up, because obviously when I wake them up, they're going to be panicked and think something terrible happened.
Well, why didn't you want to startle them? Something terrible had happened.
I didn't want to give them a heart attack when I woke them up.
But you didn't walk up and just nudge them and say, hey, Nicole, honey, can you wake up or something we can talk about? You didn't do that.
No, I was like, Brian, Nicole, wake up, wake up.
Okay, exactly. But you weren't saying it in that voice either. You were saying, Brian, Nicole, get up.
I'm not sure if it was that loud, but I definitely was. You definitely like trying to wake them up. Yes.
What was the dog's reaction?
I don't recall seeing the dog.
So, according to you, to the dog at least, we can get in the mind of a dog, a relative stranger walks in the front door, climbs a set of stairs, the house is completely dark, walks into a bedroom door and starts barking. The person starts barking, get up, wake up, Brian, Nicole. And you don't remember seeing or hearing a dog at all.
Objection.
Sustained.
As you indicated, it's not that the dog wasn't reactive, it's that you don't remember the dog even being there, correct?
I have no memory of the dog, no.
But you do know that that dog sleeps in Brian and Nicole's room, correct?
It may, I don't know for sure.
The reason you don't remember the dog being there is because the dog wasn't there, was it?
I don't remember the dog.
Right. So when you walked out of the room, when you walked in the house, didn't see the dog?
No,
When you walked up the stairs, no dog?
no,
Walked down the hallway, no dog?
no,
Walked into Brian and Nicole's bedroom door, no dog?
I don't remember seeing the dog.
I realize that. Dog or no dog? No dog.
I don't remember seeing the dog. Doesn't mean it wasn't there or it was there. I just don't remember seeing it.
Well, no dog came up to you and barked at you, correct?
No,
You didn't see or hear a dog whining or howling, did you?
no,
You didn't hear or see a dog scratching at the door?
no.
There's no sign of a dog at all in Brian and Nicole Albert's house at 6:41 a.m. when you walked into that house, correct? Or 6:40?
I don't remember seeing the dog.
And this was a 70-pound German Shepherd, correct?
I don't know the weight of the
Have
dog.
you ever heard a description given about that dog by Brian Albert, anybody else? That dog was not good with strangers.
I object.
Did you know, as you said, you're very, very dear friends, and obviously dear friends with Brian Albert, relations with Nicole Albert, your sister. Are you aware that that dog was not good with strangers?
Object.
Do you know that?
I don't. It wasn't good with other dogs is what I knew, so I could never bring my dog over there. That's all I know about the dog.
Right. Had some aggression, correct? At least with other dogs.
Possibly.
Possibly with other dogs. Is the
Yeah.
answer next question.
Thank you, Your Honor. If you could remind the jurors, in your memory, who was the last person to leave the house at 34 Fairview on the early morning hours of January 29th?
I believe Caitlin left after us, my niece.
Thank you. At some point, we've already talked a little bit about this. You said you looked out the front door glass. Was it a window or is the whole door glass?
The whole door was glass, I believe.
Is it like and pardon my ignorance, is there like a wooden door that is open and there's a storm door that's all glass that was closed? Is that what we're dealing with?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Mm-hmm. Can we take one more glance? I'm going to back up for a quick second.
Okay.
Can we take one more glance at that exhibit 3 with the court's permission?
Okay.
Thank you. And can you enhance that just a little bit, please? Thank you so much. May I approach?
Yes.
Forgot to ask you, and I apologize, Ms. McCabe.
Thank
One
you.
more point of reference. Can you please show the jurors where Brian and Nicole Albert's bedroom window is in that photograph?
Sure, it's right there.
Upper left window, uppermost left window, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. May I approach?
Yes.
Go.
Let me get back on track. You indicated that you looked out that storm door and saw Miss Reed's vehicle, her SUV, directly in front of you, correct?
Yes.
That was the first time you noted or clocked that SUV being there?
First time, I'm
The
sorry.
first time you noted the SUV, in other words, that you visually saw it, it was directly in front of you. It was not back by the mailbox, correct?
Correct.
Did you still see the Jeep parked back by the mailbox?
I looked out the window. I saw the car. I really didn't pay attention to details of other cars. I just looked and saw her car.
When you first looked out that window and saw, or looked out the door and saw the SUV, what time was that?
I don't remember off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
Does the time 2:23 a.m. sound familiar?
2:23?
I'm sorry, 12:23. My mistake.
I'm not sure.
When you looked out the door, did you see any other vehicles at that time, other than the Jeep, other than Miss Reed's SUV?
I believe I saw lights, lights like over here somewhere, if the Jeep's there and the car, is there.
Okay, can you describe for the record what you did? The theirs don't come across on the record.
Oh,
so
sorry.
to your left
Yes.
is,
Straight out would be Miss Reed's vehicle that I looked at.
okay,
I kind of looked at that. I remember my peripheral vision seeing lights over there, to the left, sorry.
all right. So the way that you're describing this, and that's lights to a vehicle, correct?
Yes,
Matter of fact, you know what vehicle that is.
I do, yes.
What vehicle is it? Describe it for the jurors, please.
It's Ryan Nagel's.
Ryan Nagel's what? Car,
The-
truck?
I believe he has a truck.
Okay. So what you're describing is you looked out the window, you saw Miss Reed's SUV directly in front of you. Right behind that, in line, was Brian Higgins' Jeep, and behind that was Ryan Nagel's truck. Is that right?
I'm not sure where his truck lines up. I just remember seeing lights. I just quickly saw Miss Reed's car and went back into the room. I wasn't, I apologize, paying attention for like specific details about cars.
At some point, you did become interested in exactly what time Ryan Nagel's truck arrived, correct? This is after the fact, well after the fact, months after the fact.
Yes, I did.
As a matter of fact, you took it upon yourself to ask Julie Nagel, Ryan's sister, to send you something, correct?
Yes, I did.
What did you ask her to send you?
I ran into the two of them.
I didn't
and-
ask you who you ran into, just what did you ask her to send you?
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. A text message.
A screenshot of a text message.
Yes, a screenshot of a text message between Julie and Ryan Nagel.
You knew at the time that Miss Nagel, very obviously, was a percipient witness in this case, correct?
I believe so. It was very early on.
Well, I mean, she was in the house. Ms.
Yes.
McCabe. She was in the house when Miss Reed's vehicle appeared, correct?
Correct.
She was in the house when you were looking at the vehicle.
Correct.
She was in the house when everybody came home came to 34 Fairview from the Waterfall Bar and Grill, correct?
Correct.
She was interacting with those inside the house at the very time we're talking about, right?
Yes.
She went outside at some point to talk to her brother outside the house, right behind the SUV that you're describing as Miss Reed's SUV, correct?
Yes.
So you knew that she was, and you knew all this when you asked her for that screenshot.
I was trying to piece together
You
the
knew all
time.
this when you asked for the screenshot. You
Yes.
knew what her position was in this case, correct?
She had no involvement. What happened outside
I didn't ask
is
you if she had
different.
involvement.
Objection.
Let her finish her answer.
Go ahead.
Ms. McCabe, finish that answer.
I didn't. What happened outside was separate from anything that happened inside.
I'm going to ask you again. You knew all of that information, that Julie Nagel was a percipient witness in this case, as was everyone else inside 34 Fairview, when you asked for that screenshot, correct?
Yes.
That is another example of you coordinating information with other witnesses in this case, correct?
No, that is not correct.
Were you ever advised by Michael Proctor not to coordinate information with other witnesses in the case? Did he ever say, don't do that?
I don't recall.
So you don't recall, or he didn't?
I don't recall if he did or not.
Okay. If he did tell you not to coordinate with other witnesses, this would be a breach of that agreement, wouldn't it?
Objection.
Sustained.
Indeed, once you got that screenshot, we'll talk about that in just a second, when you got the screenshot, did you ever share that with law enforcement?
I'm not sure if I did or not.
You never provided that to Michael Proctor or any other investigator, did you?
I'm not sure if I did or not.
As a matter of fact, Ms. McCabe, the only reason we know about that screenshot is because of the extraction on your phone. Isn't that right?
If that's how you know about it, I'm not sure.
You asked for that screenshot for your own personal use, for your own personal information, for your own personal coordination, correct, of what happened that night.
What are you asking? There's 3 questions there.
Did you ask for that screenshot for your own personal use?
Yes.
And indeed, you do know what time it was that you looked out and saw Ryan Nagel's truck, because the screenshot told you that, correct?
The screenshot told me when Ryan Nagel pulled up. It didn't tell when I saw.
And what was the time when Ryan Nagel indicated that he pulled up?
I'd have to look at the screenshot.
2:23 a.m., 12:23 a.m., sound right?
If you have it and that's what it says, absolutely.
May I approach?
Yes.
I'm sure I did. May I, Your Honor?
Okay.
Take a look at that transcript, that colloquy. You can read that to yourself, the highlighted portion to
I'd
yourself.
like to be heard.
All right, why don't you come to council? Why don't you council come to side?
May I?
Yes.
Thank you. May I approach?
Yes.
Thank
Take a
you.
look at the highlighted portion and tell me if that refreshes your recollection about anything we've been discussing.
Is the page available
I'm sorry,
before
it's
this?
just a yes or no, does that refresh your recollection about anything that we've been discussing?
It's just what we've discussed. It doesn't
Okay.
really refresh.
Okay. so it does not refresh her memory. Next question.
I don't think that's what she said.
That's what you?
Yes, that's what I said.
That was her answer.
That does not refresh your recollection?
Objection. Has to
That
be.
was her answer. Next question, Mr. Jackson.
May I approach?
Yes.
Thank you.
Take a look at the bottom of that page and tell me if that refreshes your recollection about anything we were just discussing. May I?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. McCabe, having seen these, does this refresh your recollection about what we were just discussing concerning that conversation?
Regarding me asking Julie Nagel for the time?
Correct.
Yes, it does.
Okay. And what time did that was attendant to a screenshot that you asked for, correct?
Yes.
And that time was what?
Objection.
Do you remember the time?
Can I look at the paper? I was reading everything. I didn't look at the exact
the question is
time.
whether you remember the.
Oh, do I remember it? I don't remember the exact time, but I can read it off the paper. That's different than a memory.
That's different. Next question.
So this does not refresh your recollection as to the time that was reflected on that screenshot.
I can read the time, but
That's
in
not
my
question.
memory,
That's not my question. I have to do it this way, Mrs.
okay,
Case.
sorry.
Does it refresh your recollection as you sit here, having read this, as the time that was reflected on that screenshot?
I don't, sitting here today, the only reason I know there's a time is because of what's on that paper.
But you did ask for a screenshot from Ms. Nagel, correct?
Yes, I
And that-
did.
And that screenshot said something to the effect of outside. Is that right?
Withdrawn.
Just that question. The screenshot said something about outside.
Is that right?
I believe it said here, yes.
Or maybe it's
Yeah,
here.
something
And
similar.
it was a screenshot from Ryan Nagel to Julie Nagel indicating that he had arrived.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure, it was a screenshot of a text message from Ryan Nagel to Julie Nagel saying, I've arrived. In other
Yes.
words, I've arrived at 34 Fairview.
Yes, it was.
Because he was intending to give her a ride home, which she had asked for. Is that right?
Objection.
Sustained.
You did see Julie Nagel go outside and approach the vehicle, correct?
I never saw her go near the vehicle. I saw her go outside.
Got it. Did she ultimately come back indoors?
Yes.
Did she come back in with anybody else?
No.
About what time would you estimate that to have been in the course of that evening?
When she came back inside,
When she walked out and then came back inside?
soon after she went out, she talked to her brother, she came back inside.
And about what time of day was that? If you know.
I mean, this was all happening while we were at my sister's house.
Right. Was it 12:15, 12:30, 12:45, 1 o'clock?
Well, according to that paper, it would have had to
That's
been.
not what I'm
Not
asking.
not according to the.
Do you have an independent recollection of about, if not down to the minute, about what time that was?
I could say I'd have to be. I wasn't looking at my watch that night, so it's very hard for me to give a time just off of my memory. I know what I've seen, but
Okay.
it's hard.
You did see both Ryan Nagel's truck and Miss Reed's SUV in front of the house at the same time, correct?
I saw his lights in my peripheral vision on the
Right.
left,
But the lights are attached to what?
the car, but it wasn't out front. Miss Reed's vehicle was out front.
Right. When I say in front of 34 Fairview, we're going to talk about the spacing in just a second. I just meant out in front of the house.
Yes, over to the side, correct?
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're indicating that, and I want to be clear about this, as you're looking out that storm door window, going from right to left, it was Miss Reed's vehicle, correct?
Yes.
Then Higgins's Jeep, is that right?
His Jeep was in front of the mailbox.
Then behind that, was there a space? And then Mr. Nagel's truck, or was the truck right behind the Jeep?
That's what I can't tell you. I just remember seeing lights. I didn't look over and pay much attention to it. I was just quickly looking at the Miss Reed's car,
Do
and
you
then I
remember-
went back and sat down.
Do you recall testifying at a prior hearing that it was, your perception was Miss Reed's car, her SUV, the Jeep, a space, and then Mr. Nagel's truck from right to left?
I remember Mr. Nagel's truck over to the left in my peripheral vision. I can't give you an exact location.
But there's no question in your mind as you sit here that Brian Higgins' Jeep was between Brian Nagel's truck and Miss Reed's SUV. You remember that very clearly, correct?
I know that this Miss Reed's vehicle was here, and there were lights in my peripheral vision over here. I wasn't, I just was looking quickly.
So let me ask the question again.
Okay.
Assuming that the lights are attached to something, Brian Nagel's truck, we've already established that. What you're looking at, when you look out the storm door window, is Miss Reed's truck, or SUV rather. So just behind that is the left. As you're looking at it, Mr. Higgins' Jeep, correct? And behind that, Mr. Nagel's truck. You remember the Jeep being between the truck and the SUV, correct?
I remember looking out the window. It was dark. I remember seeing lights over to the left. That is what I remember.
Where was the Jeep as it relates to the lights?
I'm assuming the Jeep was still parked at the mailbox.
You saw it there. I mean, it's a 5,000-pound Jeep, right?
It was dark. I wasn't studying outside. It was a quick thing I did. I looked, I saw it, I went back to the table.
Okay, and I'm asking for what the saw it part was. Let's just slow down on the saw it part.
Okay.
You looked and you saw Brian Nagel's truck, then you saw Higgins' Jeep, then you saw Miss Reed's SUV, correct?
I saw Miss Reed's SUV parked straight out front, and in my peripheral vision, I saw lights that, yes, must have been attached to a truck, but I didn't study the lineup of cars. I'm sorry.
All right, so
May I have one more question?
one more question.
Where was the Jeep? Was it in front of the SUV, behind Mr. Nagel's truck, or was it between the two of them? It's a simple question.
You're asking what I saw when I looked outside. I didn't.
I am.
And I'm telling you exactly what I saw. It was dark. It was Karen's car there, and in my peripheral vision, I saw lights, and then I went back to the table.
Okay, that's the last question. We're going to break for lunch.
Very well.
All right, jurors, we'll take our lunch and recess. And Ms. McCabe, you can follow up right behind the jurors, and we'll see you up here in 45 minutes.
Okay, thank you.